I am Dylan Jovine, and I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to Nicole for inviting me to speak here. And when she first told me that the subject of roots she told me that the subject this month was roots, and I thought to myself, well, what does that mean to me? I never really considered what roots meant. I started searching it online, and I found this Malay proverb that, can you guys hear me? Yeah. I've never been accused of talking too lowly. So, anyway, I found this Malay proverb that says, a tree with strong roots laughs at storms, laughs at a storm. And I wondered what that meant, because I've learned in life that we walk through such serious storms. Years, personal life and our professional lives, and these storms can last for years. You feel like you're alone, and you're walking up a snow-covered mountain by yourself, and it's hard. And I thought, well, how have I survived those storms in my life? How have roots helped me survive that time? And I realized that for me, roots could be another word for relationships. Who I leaned on when I was going through some of these very challenging times of my life. So I started to really think about my past a little bit differently. And this has been the great experience, the unexpected pleasure of this, of doing this, is that I got to think about my past in a different way, and I'm grateful to share it. Because I'm sure at least one person in this room is going through a tough time in their lives. So I started to think about the relationships, the key people in my life that helped me when I was at a crossroads or when I was in a storm. And I wanted to share some of those with you today. But first, I'm going to give you a little bit of my background. I was born in Queens, New York in the 70s. I was raised in Queens, New York in the 70s. And I used black and white because I thought it looked cool. But it's really, when I think back, it's a really different time. Anybody old enough to have lived in the 70s to now, it's like we're a different culture. More than just the iPhone, the way we talk to people, the way we interact. It's unbelievable, really. And we were poor. I grew up on welfare and food stamps. And, big dinners for us were macaroni and cheese a lot, 49-cent boxes or whatever they were then. And it was always a special treat for us when we added hot dogs, cut up hot dogs to the macaroni and cheese. And anybody here who's grown up with limited means, that you really form great roots, powerful, unique kinds of roots with people. It's a special thing to be poor with somebody. I was so poor that back in the day, it was so different than it is today, that at about 8, 9 years old, I started quote unquote working at Wallbounds, meaning that they let me just help people bring the groceries from the store to the car, and it was how I earned extra money, and this shows you how different we are. There'd be child labor laws right now. Somebody would call Child Protective Services, but we were like little hood rats. We just did anything to make money, And I remember once there was an elderly lady who would come in, every few days or whatever it was, and, she would always buy 10 or 11 cans or 12 cans of cat food. And I used to, and I remember saying to the cashier one day, wow, she must have a lot of cats. She never buys food. And he told me that was food she ate. She didn't have money to buy food for herself. And that really struck me, and it frightened me that could happen. And it's happening in this county, and it happens. You'd be shocked at how often and how regular that is. But it really, if I had it put a fire in my belly to succeed. I was so frightened of that outcome. I just was so shocked that could happen, that it put a fire in me. I was like a bullet when I saw an opportunity. I was not going to be denied. That was the attitude I had. I was a man on a mission. And So that was who I was growing up. And that's what I was thinking. It was completely focused on, quote, success, however I defined it at the time, which was just accumulation of money. I was kind of aimless, meaning I was focused on money, but I had no direction. I didn't know which way to go. So one of the great relationships, or one of the roots from my childhood, somebody I grew up with at a very early age, I didn't know what to do with all this desire. My friend Paul, my roots got me my first big job. Somebody I grew up with, somebody that I bagged groceries with. The person I saw my first movie with, Flash Gordon, But he got me my first job, my roots. I mean, that changed my life. That opened a door for me onto Wall Street, which is where, everything else opened up because a friend got me my first job. My roots, I didn't even know they were working that way. I, did fairly well on Wall Street. And then at some point, I started my own firm, and I was very blessed. It was the 90s, so money was cheap. It was easy. It was a lot easier. It's like now. Anyway, when I looked around, my brother worked with me. When I looked around and I said to my friends I was going to start a firm, much like a group like this, the first person to stand up and say that they were with me, and I was risking my entire career. Like I would have been squashed. Talk about going out on your own. The first time you do that, it is frightening. My brother stood up and said, I'm with you. I got your back. How can I help? Again, another example of how my roots really supported me at this very critical and scary, frightening time of my life. And we went on to do that, and that was the first company I sold. We started a company called Lexington Capital Partners, and I ended up selling it in 2000. And after we sold that company, I started an internet company, my first one, and it's my middle child. It almost put me into bankruptcy. Okay, so my first company, I come out and I hit the ground running, and it's a great smashing success. And I take all the money that I make there, and because I know everything, because I made money on one thing, so that means I'm God, right? I know everything. So I can do anything. If I succeeded here, that means I have more information and I'm smarter than anybody in the room. So I took all those winnings, and my next company, like I said, it almost sent me into bankruptcy. Talk about a humbling experience. And there I was, like, shocked that this happened to me. Here I am, this guy who's, they used to say on the ball. This guy's on the ball. You got to keep an eye on him. And I was virtually bankrupt, and all my friends were doing great on Wall Street. So what do I, it was embarrassing. But I was grateful that I had friends to talk to about it, and I shared it with friends. I didn't keep it in. I didn't keep the embarrassment of such a public failure inside of me. I talked about it. I had friends like Todd and Jenn and George and Andrew, and for like a year I was trying to process this, what happened to me. How did I get this so wrong? How did I not understand this business? And these poor people had to listen to me basically for like a year, but they were patient. Again, neighborhood roots. These are people I grew up with. They were there for me when I needed them the most. That terrible dark year, that was a dark year. That was a year where my world financially, it was like, what do I have to sell? How am I going to pay my rent? It was a dark year. Going from what I had been making to that it took me like a year to wrap my head around my new reality. That was a year of walking uphill in 3 feet of snow by myself. That's how I felt. But I had friends helping me carry the load, which I'm eternally grateful for. I remember at a very critical moment, I felt so lost. I didn't know what to do. It's like, what am I going to do with my career? I don't know what to do with myself. I was lost. I just didn't know what to go. I didn't know what direction to go in now. So I remember a friend of mine came down. I'd moved to Florida by then. My friend Teeka came down, and he looked at me and said, Dylan, don't forget who you are. Don't forget what you can do. And it mattered to me when he said that. It touched me greatly. For some reason, it was like a slap in the face that I needed. I was like, and I said, well, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that, but I can't do that. The question is not whether you can do it or not. The question is, how do you do it? And that just switched something in my head. I was like, how do I do it? And I remembered, because, what I learned is that if you lose for a while, you forget how to win. Like, I forgot how to win. I forgot how to say, how do I do something? And I'm grateful for him, because that little spark on a beach in Florida really propelled me. Stacy, before we were married, I was debating what to do with myself. I didn't know what to do with myself. So she said, do what you love. Why don't we figure out the thing you love? I love writing, and I love investing. How do I combine them? But she did this exercise, which, for me, I was like, you want me to write down the things I really like? It sounds ridiculous, but it worked. It's like the one time that exercise worked for me, and boy, did it work. We found out what do I really love? That silly exercise changed my life. Again, roots, people I'm leaning on in a storm, came through for me. There I was in Florida without any money. Okay, so I have an idea. I want to write and I want to invest. How do I create a business around this? I have it, I have the idea, I start to see it, I start to study my competitors, I start to do the work, but I don't have money and my name is in tatters. Remember, I was that guy on the go. Whatever happened to Dylan? Now I'm telling you guys, I grew a long beard and long hair. I was the guy on the bus. I was taking a bus in Florida. That's how bad it got, okay? I was the guy on the bus that parents with their kids were like, come here, stay with me. I must have been, I was Ted Kaczynski all the way. So another time, roots from my neighborhood. A kid I grew up with, Chris, a dear, dear friend of mine. And this is his sister and his then wife. He said, he's just not that cool. I mean, he's cool. He said, I believe in you. I'll back you. And he backed me. Again, this is somebody I grew up with. My roots helping me back, my relationships, giving back people that I had deep relationships with. Another friend of mine, Will Bonner, when I got into the business, I met him and he said, let me show you how this business works. And we used to meet all the time. And he would show me how the industry worked because he was in the business and his family was in the business. So again, roots giving back to me beyond my wildest imagination. Another friend of mine from Queens, what can I do to help? Again, these are my roots coming back to me, helping me through this time. The relationships, again, I'm in a storm. I'm coming out of the storm. I'm putting together my business plan. I'm looking for smart people to help me. I need to hire people. And my buddy Wayne's like, graduates from Columbia University. So how can I help? How can I get involved? This sounds smart. This sounds cool. What can I do to help? My mother's an accountant. She just retired. She wanted to help too. So I was leaning here. I felt like I was pulling myself up over a cliff, that I was hanging on the ledge, pulling myself over, and everybody was lending a hand to help pull me up. And that was profoundly important to me. I would not be here. I would not have succeeded, again, if it wasn't for these people, these roots in my life. There I was, years later, we made a lot of money, very successful, and I sold my business to the largest company in my industry. I ended up selling my business to basically like the Google of my industry, multi-billion-dollar company, and it's a great win. But I looked in the mirror and I no longer recognized the person who looked back at me. The price that I paid to work that hard, that burning fire from that lady with the cat food, that wasn't enough anymore. I had outgrown that passion. So I took time off. I had a family, kids, daughter, Lila, who's here right now, my son, Teddy, and I just needed to get back to neutral. And a couple years later, 2 years ago, I launched Behind the Markets after taking time off, after changing what I value. And that's how I met Nicole, and I met Amber, because I work out of the Flamingo House. But again, while I'm doing this again, a bunch of new roots are starting to grow, which is awesome. A new root, another thing. Last year, I suffered some kind of really big setback at work, and another root, another relationship of mine said, you know what, let me help you through this. You know, I mean, a significant hit that really could have determined the success or failure of this venture. And a friend of mine, Josh, really helped me through it. Anyway, I guess you could say that all of my success, I get by with little help from my friends. So what I've learned, some of the things I've learned, you know, character is more important than intelligence or work ethic. You know, character is when you ask somebody something and you can trust their answer. If you just have intelligence and work ethic and no character, you better watch out, because that person's going to hurt you. That person can hurt you. Character is so important. You know, it's the New York Times test. You know, don't do anything today that you'd be ashamed about if it was on the front page of the New York Times tomorrow. The second thing, I value myself. So I used to value myself by money. You know, I needed to make money. Money, 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 money. I was like a little Pac-Man. Da, 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 da. And the accumulation and how I felt about myself was directly determined by the money I made and had. Now, I don't value myself that way anymore. I value myself by the quality of the relationships in my life. Other thing I learned is to get what you want in life, you have to help people get what they want. I mean, if you really want to get what you want some judo here? To get what you want in life, you have to help people get what they want. If you become a master at helping people get what they want, you will be shocked where that takes you. It'll take you to the most unexpected places in the world. And finally, ask for help. I mean, the hardest 3 words I ever had to learn in my life was, I need help. It is difficult for anybody to say, especially someone like me, you know, self-made. But, you know, those words, being honest at critical moments and saying I need help, which comes to being honest, that really is, you know, I don't think those people would have said those things to me if I didn't say I need help, or I was scared, or I don't know what I'm going to do. How would they have known? If I acted like everything was okay, how would they have known? How would my friends have helped me up? So I'm not saying to be a sucker, because, you know, in business you can't afford to be a sucker, but pick moments, even with people you do business with, pick moments. And if you see an opening, take it. And finally, chess, not checkers. You know, I always say this to anybody, you know, we're playing chess, not checkers. If you're thinking checkers, I can't play, you know, with you, you know, in business. You gotta think chess, you gotta think long term. You gotta think that I'm gonna be in this industry. Once you find, you know, there's a difference between a job and a career. Once you find your career, I've always looked at my career like a craft. I wanna practice and get better at practicing craft. And I want to be in this career for as long as I want. And I'm going to think long term, because a lot of the people, how would you treat somebody today in your profession if you knew they were going to be in the same profession in 20 years? How would you treat them? Would it change how you treated them? Because, you know, the key to success in my experience is surviving multiple cycles in a business. You know, good times, bad times, good times, bad times. And, you know, if you imagine that everybody you're talking to is somebody you will likely be talking to in 20 years, maybe what you say to them changes. Anyway, that's all I have to share.